work and independence, but on the evening of January 31st, 26, that legacy collided with a single devastating syllable. Nancy Guthrie said no. Annie Guthrie asked her mother for a loan, and the refusal that followed didn't just end a conversation, it started a countdown. 2 weeks later, Nancy Guthrie was gone. We aren't here to talk about the doorbell footage you've seen 1,000 times or to debate the porch guy theories. Today, we are following the evidence that the mainstream media is too afraid to touch. Today, we are opening the red folder, a sequenced, documented financial trail that proves this wasn't just a disappearance, it was a career-ending, life-altering execution of a plan. As you watch this, remember the number 14. For 14 hours and 13 minutes, Nancy Guthrie was missing, and the people who lived 4 miles away, Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Cioni, the people who knew Nancy Guthrie was deaf, medicated, and defenseless, did absolutely nothing. The most powerful piece of evidence in this case isn't a body, it's a motive. To understand the violence of February 1st, we must look at the deceptive calm of May 25. While the world saw Nancy Guthrie as a grandmother attending church in the Catalina foothills, a silent legal exchange was happening in the shadows. A durable power of attorney was signed, and Tommaso Cioni granted Annie Guthrie authority over his financial affairs. But look closer and ask yourself why the legal walls were being reinforced 8 months before the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. Look at the early interviews through a liar's lens. When you watch the footage of Annie Guthrie from early February, don't listen to her words. Watch her hands. Observe the micro-tremors when the word loan is mentioned, and the forced asymmetrical smile that never reaches her eyes. The public saw a grieving daughter in Annie Guthrie, but the insider sees a woman living in a $650,000 home looking across the valley at Nancy Guthrie and her $1 million unencumbered asset. There was a $350,000 gap between their lives, and that gap was closing fast. Nancy Guthrie was a woman of routine who took her medication at 10 p.m. and removed her hearing aids, making Nancy Guthrie the most unprotected woman in Tucson. The family had the resources of an NBC salary behind them, yet Nancy Guthrie lived in a $1 million fortress with the security of a cardboard box. January 31st at 9:50 p.m. was the ground zero of this mystery when Tommaso Cioni drove Nancy Guthrie home. It was a 4-mile trip, 10 minutes of silence in a car that records every GPS coordinate, every door-opening event, and every fluctuation in speed. Tommaso Cioni says he walked Nancy Guthrie in and watched the garage seal, but a leaked internal memo suggests the FBI seized the vehicle of Annie Guthrie because of a sensory narrative found inside. Imagine the smell of industrial-grade cleaner in a family SUV, or the blue light of a leaking phone at 3 a.m., pinging off towers that the story of Tommaso Cioni says he was never near. The blood on the porch was a distraction. While investigators stared at the front door, the real breach was happening in the back, with a flower pot propping open a door. Whoever entered the house of Nancy Guthrie didn't break in. They were invited by the silence. As the financial trail of Annie Guthrie went viral, a digital inferno erupted, causing high-profile names to delete their histories and leading to a sitting county official publicly accusing the sheriff of interfering with the FBI. NBC News even built a specific protocol to remove Savannah Guthrie from the air if an arrest happened in real time. Enter the shadow figure, Cameron Guthrie, the son of Nancy Guthrie, whose 90-day silence is deafening. In missing persons cases, when a direct blood relative like Cameron Guthrie vanishes from the public narrative, it's often because they are waiting for the blacklist to drop. This is a career execution, and while lawyers draft injunctions to stop this information, boxes are already being moved out of the home of Nancy Guthrie. Nancy Guthrie, a woman who hasn't been declared dead, is already having her assets liquidated by Annie Guthrie, and the supposedly cleared status of the family is a legal shield, not a forensic fact. You don't keep the vehicle of Annie Guthrie for 6 weeks unless you are waiting for the lab at Quantico to confirm forbidden data. The FBI sent a rootless hair sample found near Nancy Guthrie's bedroom to Othram Forensics and has kept the 911 call made by Annie Guthrie sealed because it likely contains background noises and knowing details that Annie Guthrie shouldn't have had if she had just arrived. The DNA found at the scene doesn't belong to a career criminal. It belongs to someone with a clean history, someone who attended that final dinner and sat across from Nancy Guthrie when she said no to the loan request. The financial pressure on Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Cioni was reaching a breaking point. Public records indicate that property values in the area were shifting, and the million-dollar asset owned by Nancy Guthrie represented the only exit strategy for a family drowning in undisclosed debt. The loan refusal by Nancy Guthrie wasn't just a mother saying no to a daughter. It was the closing of a door on the financial survival of Annie Guthrie. When Annie Guthrie called 911 at 12:03 p.m., 7 minutes had already passed since her arrival at the home of Nancy Guthrie. What happened in those 7 minutes? Was Annie Guthrie searching for the red folder? Was Annie Guthrie ensuring that the 14-hour operational window had been executed perfectly? The silence of Tommaso Cioni and the carefully choreographed media appearances of Savannah Guthrie all point to a unified front designed to protect the brand, even if it means sacrificing the truth about Nancy Guthrie. The nuclear revelation is that investigators are no longer looking for a kidnapper. They are building a financial murder case. They are looking at the power of attorney signed months in advance as premeditation. They are looking at the loan request as the trigger. And they are looking at the 14-hour silence as the execution. The digital inferno is spreading because the public can see what the authorities are trying to hide. That the million-dollar motive is the only thing that explains the total lack of security and the total silence following the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. This isn't just about Annie Guthrie or Tommaso Cioni. It's about a systemic failure to protect a vulnerable elder. The boxes leaving the house in Annie Guthrie's Honda CR-V are a visual anchor for this entire conspiracy. No death certificate, no probate, yet the assets of Nancy Guthrie are being physically moved. This is the narrative shift the media is ignoring. Investigators have noted that the 40-day hold on the vehicle driven by Tommaso Cioni was unprecedented. It suggests that forensic teams were finding traces of Nancy Guthrie in places she should never have been. The telemetric data from the car shows a discrepancy in the timeline provided by Tommaso Cioni. If he drove her straight home, why does the data show the vehicle idling in a remote area for 18 minutes? Why did Annie Guthrie not mention the open door or the missing medication during the first 3 minutes of her 911 call? These are the questions that lead to a criminal indictment. Is Annie Guthrie a victim of an unthinkable tragedy, or is Annie Guthrie the architect of a cover-up? Is Tommaso Cioni a helpful son-in-law, or is Tommaso Cioni the last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive for a reason? Type victim or architect in the comments below. Share this video before the injunctions take it down. Nancy Guthrie is still out there, and her heartbeat is the only thing the architects can't silence. Subscribe now to stay protected from the Guthrie cover-up, because when the trial date is set, the world will finally hear the truth that Nancy Guthrie tried to tell us with her final one word. That is all it takes to dismantle a life. For 84 years, Nancy Guthrie built a legacy of faith, hard work, and independence. But on the evening of January 31st, 26, that